If food didn't matter, then why do we see real changes in blood work when we change what we eat? I've seen that in my own labs, I've seen it in patient labs, and I've seen it in my own family where food becomes the difference between life and death. The truth is that your doctor may not have emphasized food, not because they don't care, but because they were never trained to see food as medicine. But if you want lasting change, you can't ignore it. That's the problem. Food is almost never part of the recommendations you get in a doctor's office. And it's not because the doctor doesn't care, but because the system has never taught them to see food as medicine. And yet, real health transformation almost always starts with one thing: a diet change. So if you've been told that food doesn't matter, this video is going to show you why that's wrong, what your doctor's not telling you, and how food can result in permanently reshaping your blood work. Let's start off with talking about why food isn't part of the recommendations. And it's quite simply because most doctors aren't trained in nutrition. They get less than 20 hours of nutrition education in med school. I can tell you this firsthand because for about 15 years, I taught a guest nutrition lecture at Texas A&M Medical School, and this class was one of 6 lectures that the med students were able to take as part of an elective course for complementary and alternative medicine. And I hope you didn't overhear what I just said. An elective course. So this wasn't even something that was mandatory for them to take. But my point is that was all the nutrition education that even in a top tier medical school like this, that those med students were exposed to. Most medical practitioners that are extremely well versed in nutrition aren't getting that education in school. They're getting that education after medical school and going out and seeking that on their own. And when you kind of think back, because that is not the typical traditional provider out there. So when you think of, well, what then does the system offer? Well, the system emphasizes prescriptions and procedures. It doesn't focus on prevention at all, and that's where food comes into play. And I'm often told by patients that their medical provider will tell them food doesn't matter, or eat whatever you want because it's not going to make a difference. And this leaves a lot of individuals feeling that food is irrelevant. They take that statement to heart and they begin to incorporate in that mindset into their life. And that's just not the accurate mindset to be working with if you're trying to optimize health. And here's where I'm going to begin to have a shift with you for you, hopefully, and illustrate that mindset is really the difference maker when it comes to food recommendations. If you accept that food doesn't matter, then understand that by doing that, what you're also doing is giving up control of your own health. And as long as you hang on to the notion that food does matter, then that means that you still have one additional tool in your arsenal to be able to work with to make an impact in a positive direction on your diet. It is still fully under your control. Once you understand that your health is under your own personal control, then you have to begin to ask the question, what's the cost of listening to this advice that tells me food doesn't matter? And quite frankly, it boils down to it's going to lead to failure and frustration for you. And I saw this with one of my own family members, one of my uncles, where he had a late stage cancer, stage 3, stage 4. And I'm not suggesting that making dietary changes would have reversed the ultimate conclusion for my uncle. But what I did see is that the advice given to him by his providers, by his medical doctors, his oncologist, was that he should eat more calories regardless of what the characteristic of those calories was or where those calories were coming from. Just eat more calories. He was as much as I always remember him, he was always a relatively tall, lanky individual, and he didn't have a big frame. So when he started losing weight, it was even more detrimental for him. But rather than telling him, eat quality proteins, eat amounts of good, health stabilizing, metabolically stabilizing fats. Instead, they just told him eat more calories, which translated to him as I can have more ice cream. That was literally one of the things that he would always put at the end of his meals just because he liked it. He knew it was going to add calories. And I guess in his mind, he thought, I've seen people that maybe aren't the healthiest, they're overweight, and they're eating this, they're eating these poor food choices. And it was just a thought process that translated because he was told that it didn't matter what quality of food that he ate as long as he ate more food. It's just the wrong mindset all the way around, right? So it was just the ideology that you're giving up control because you're not choosing specific foods here. But you have to appreciate that when you make choices in food, food is going to impact your labs. It's going to impact them negatively or it's going to impact them positively. You may feel that as just energetically, how do you feel? You may see that on labs in terms of how much inflammation is showing up on a lab. Maybe you've got blood sugar dysfunction that's starting to manifest. Or, for example, when I pull nutrient levels on patients and I look at those, I see how their amino acid levels are fluctuating, or maybe markers like zinc and B12, choline, that can give me some idea of are they getting sufficient amounts of protein in their diet. These are all things that I can directly see in a lab, as well as others being able to see that tell me flat out that food makes a difference. There's no question about that. So we can never accept this notion that regardless of what the condition is, regardless of what name has been attached to whatever you're dealing with, that food doesn't matter. When you ignore food, just ignore it and just throw caution to the wind with what you consume, you're going to pay a price for that. And that's not a warning. It's just reality of how things play out. You're going to end up feeling poor health. You'll have low energy, low stamina, low vitality. The inflammation goes up. You feel it in your body. You just don't feel good. And you can flat out see it in the labs. And here's the other thing to note about this is that if I go back to this idea about the mindset, we don't want to reinforce this mindset that you don't want to have control. When you're talking about real health transformation, that is always going to begin with what you decide to put in your mouth. And that decision gives you back control. And even more so when you make a choice in a healthy direction and you make the best choice in that healthy direction. So for example, rather than just choosing a protein, just choosing chicken or just choosing beef, you're choosing regeneratively raised, pasture-raised chicken. You're choosing grass-fed and finished beef. When you're making those regenerative food choices, you don't just feel in control. You know in your mind that you're creating a solid foundation that you can trust in, and that is going to give you a firmer mindset. The changes that you experience physiologically are going to translate into a more solid mindset that you can approach your health with. Now, here's the thing that I want to impart on you is that once you see that food really matters and it truly does move the needle, guys, you can't unsee that. You can't go backwards in this conversation. If you acknowledge and you've seen firsthand that food is a difference maker, you can't ever go back to the mindset you were prior and say that food doesn't matter. That will just never settle with you. It'll never make sense in your mind again. And when you start fueling your body with real regeneratively raised proteins, and you're looking at your labs are going to show it. You're going to see the benefit of doing it firsthand. The data's not going to lie to you. And that's the reason that we raise the foods that we do at Harvest Hills Ranch, because you should never wonder if the food on your plate is going to be working for you or if it's going to be working against you. And the tragedy is that when food gets dismissed and it's just pushed away as not being important and not relevant to the conversation around your health, the cost of that wrong advice can be absolutely devastating. Now, are there exceptions to the rule of what I'm telling you right now? Yeah, there are those outliers, those far outliers that are exceptions to the rule, but the likelihood that that's you? No, probably not. There is a truth that comes with consuming real food, and food does move the needle, right? It's going to move the needle on your labs. Your labs are going to improve. You're going to see things become more balanced. And you may observe that as things like your blood sugar is going to become more stabilized. You'll see that your cholesterol, triglycerides, your total proteins, your blood urea nitrogen, all these things start to fall back in line when you get good quality whole foods back in your diet. And you're swapping out these inflammatory driving foods for true whole foods. And that may mean that you're eating more whole plant foods. It may mean that you're eating more whole animal foods. But the point is that the whole foods are going to have more nutrient density that are going to drive in nutrients like the B12, the omega-3s, the zinc, the iron. A lot of these nutrients that I've alluded to are just outright mentioned so far, but there's multiple of these nutrients that are going to come into the picture, plus all these secondary metabolites that are health promoting that you get from truly regeneratively raised, pasture raised, grass finished meats that you're not going to see if you're not consuming those foods, or if you've just thrown caution to the wind where your diet's concerned. And I understand I'm probably preaching to the choir on this. So with that in mind, I also want to acknowledge that what I'm sharing with you today is not about a fad diet. It's not about any type of diet. It's just simply about food quality. And that's why the pasture raised component is so important here, because foods are going to be in a form that your body can recognize, it can use, and it does it consistently and it does it reliably. And they're going to drive the foundation that your health can always fall back on. You can always trust that those are going to be health promoting foods for you, and they're going to build your body from the inside out. And when you're fueling your body with these types of foods, the other thing that you're not doing is you're not chasing quick fixes, right? You just become immune, if you will, to a lot of this conversation that can start to steer you down the wrong road, because you know these quick fixes never have and never will build lasting health. You are on the path towards building a foundation that you can always come back to. And if you think about this, what am I coming back to in this conversation? The mindset. The mindset is everything here. And that's what you have to acknowledge when you're looking at your diet and you're looking at your food choices, is maybe a better way to say that. Let me not put this under the umbrella of diet. Let me put it under the food choices that you make. The mindset that you have around those food choices, when that becomes ingrained in you, it becomes unshakable. And the more unshakable that mindset becomes, the more that translates into optimal health. So think about it not as just another food choice. It's a mindset that you have that's leading to a food choice that's going to translate into more optimal health. And that is how you take back the authority over your own health and don't give up that freedom to someone else or something else. This is what it boils down to. When food gets dismissed, the cost of that is always on you. It's going to be in your energy. It's going to be in the labs when you look at them and review those with your healthcare provider, and it's going to be in your future health. But the moment that you decide that food matters and that you have that mindset around food, you immediately took back control. And if you want to see proof of that, then watch this video where I broke down my own blood work. You'll see exactly how food changed the results and how it can change for you too.